Here we are on the front of our Grand Design Reflection. We're going to do a walkthrough tutorial just like you would get on the day of delivery, going through the operation of our unit so you have something to refer back to. There is also a deeper dive on some of these components as well as other components if your name brand differs in our Helpful Hacks section on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, do all those awesome things so you can help support the channel and we can continue to do this. On the front of our unit, of course, we have our kingpin. We also have our 7-way plug right here. That 7-way plug is going to transfer all of your lights from your towing vehicle to the fifth wheel on here, as well as our battery charge line that'll pull off the alternator of the vehicle and charge your battery while you're traveling down the road. Last thing you'll have is your brake controller. Once it initiates off the brake pedal, it will send a brake signal through here to the brakes on the trailer. Well, speaking of brakes, we're also going to have our breakaway cable right here. This breakaway cable needs to be fastened to the truck itself, not to the hitch. The reason being is if something ever happens to the hitch, fifth wheel hitch in the bed of the truck, this is going to separate, pull off of the truck. We want that pin to pull out of that breakaway box and activate the brakes on our trailer. Now that can only happen if we have a good 12-volt system on our fifth wheel, meaning that we have a good solid charged battery. If we don't, then that system is not going to activate. We also need to make sure that pin is inserted in that box at all times, otherwise it will be locking up and activating those brakes when you don't want them to. In our front pass-through bay, we have our Furrion solar charge controller. Of course, we have our solar panels up on the roof. This is going to convert our solar power into a charging power for our battery system on our unit. There are a few settings on there in regards to what type of batteries you have, so on and so forth. I'd refer to the owner's manual just to be specific about different types and everything. It's a little bit to go into on that kind of stuff. So just know that all that stuff's in your owner's manual to get a better idea for your solar system. To the right of it, we're going to have our solar prep disconnect. Now what that's going to do is basically just disconnect our solar from our unit. In the event that we don't want to use it for whatever reason, we can go ahead and just shut it off, and that is going to completely disconnect it from our battery system, so it's not going to charge our system or anything. Now that is going to be separate from our actual battery disconnect. So if our battery disconnect is off, then this solar system is on. It's still going to connect to our batteries and charge our batteries off of that solar system, even if our disconnect is off, so no concern there. As far as our actual battery disconnect goes, it literally does what it says. It disconnects the battery from our RV system. We want to use this when we store our unit unplugged so we can conserve the battery power in here. Anytime we have our unit plugged in, whether it's storage or use, whatever the case may be, we want to make sure that switch is on. So the converter system, which is our battery charging system, will actually go ahead and charge that battery when we're plugged in. In here, we're going to have some fuses and resettable fuses that are thermal. They're going to automatically reset, so some slide outs and stuff operate off of some of these things. If your slide out stops, the electric ones, then you want to give it about 30 to 60 seconds to kind of cool down and then maybe go operate it again. There's not necessarily a whole lot in here that needs to be maintained. So don't worry about it. That's just where everything is. In the event that you have to go that deep into troubleshooting for 12-volt power, you would come here. We also have a set of fuses and stuff inside the unit we'll go over later. This is our actual converter, that charging system we spoke about. It's going to change our 110 power, which is coming in right here, to 12-volt power going right here out to our battery. That's going to go ahead and keep our batteries charged up. We do see a couple of fuses right here. We can check in the event this system isn't outputting correctly. This is going to operate whenever you're plugged in. If not, it's not going to operate, right? You have a little cooling fan on there, you'll hear operating whenever it is plugged in. Over to the left over there, we do have our inverter prep system. An inverter is going to change 12-volt power to 110 power. In the event we don't have a plug-in, want to operate a couple of small 110 appliances, we can do that. You are pre-wired for that system. And then we're also going to have our LCI leveling system right here. Our main control panel for all that is right above us, and that is where all your jacks and everything are going to go to as far as that system is concerned. We do have a few fuses on there. In the event it's not working, those operate our individual jacks. We do have other videos on our jacks and how it operates. Of course, we're going to go over the operation of this one too. Those will be under our Helpful Hacks section. Now I'll give you a quick turn right here, and we have our actual front individual leveling jacks. These are for our landing gears. On the bottom right here, we do have a little cap. That bottom cap would come off, and in there is our override. We have a 3/8 nut in there. You put that socket on a drill and you can manually run this jack up and down. Now, of course, these are individual, one on each side. Before you do that, you do want to disconnect your 12-volt plugs before you override that system. You only want to do this if you're having an issue with the jack, can't figure it out. You would go ahead and put that in there, and you would just run that drill in forward or reverse, depending on which way you need to operate that jack. Also want to add, with our leveling system, we want to make sure we have at least 6 holes showing on these landing gears. Otherwise, you're going to run out of stroke on these jacks in order to level your unit. So make sure we're using at least 6 holes. We can see them, count them on there, and you won't run into any errors as far as trying to level your system in regards to that. Here we are on the driver's side of our reflection. Here we have a propane tank on this side. We're gonna have another one on the other side. Inside here on the driver's side, at least on this one, sometimes it may be on the passenger side, we have our dual propane regulator. So both tanks on each side are connected. They're gonna run to that dual propane regulator, and you're gonna have a selector switch on there that you can turn to decide which one you want to be your primary tank. Now you're going to want to have both tanks on, and whatever one you have selected, obviously that's going to be your primary. You go ahead and operate your system. If that primary tank runs dry, it will automatically swap over to that secondary tank and begin pulling from that. That way you don't lose operation of your LP in the middle of cooking or anything, of course, until that secondary tank runs dry. Now, if you notice on that gauge on there, it will turn red to let you know that primary tank is empty. You can swap the selector over to the secondary tank and it will show you the value of that one. If it's not red, it's not empty, right? At that point, we can get that previous primary tank refilled or replaced. In here, we have our Lippard LCI leveling system. This is going to be an electric leveling system on this unit. And we also have our tire link system. That tire link system is already in there. The monitor is on there. We have the sensors, so we can monitor our tires while we're traveling down the road. And here we have our control center. We're going to go over the operation of our control center as well as our LCI leveling right now. So we can see our electronic leveling system right here, made by Lippard. If we kick it on, we can see on our main display right here, we're going to have our battery voltage. Whenever we hit our arrows, it brings us to our auto hitch height. Our auto hitch height is used after we have been camping. Basically, this will bring us back to the point that the trailer was at whenever we disconnected from our hitch on the truck, so you don't have to guess what level it needs to be at. If you want to use that feature, you just hit enter and it will begin to extend those jacks out and put it at the height that it was in before you went into that auto level. Our next one is auto retract all. We would go to that once we are hooked up to the truck. We can hit enter and it will retract all of our jacks. Now you should definitely double check your fifth wheel hitch and ensure that you are locked in before you do this, because once you pull away, all the weight and everything relies on that fifth wheel hitch at that point. So be sure you're locked in good before you hit that auto retract all. Our next one is auto retract rear. If we want to just bring up the rear jacks and leave the front landing jacks down, we can go through that. And our last one is manual level. Manual level is if we wanted to go in, hit enter, and we can see right here we have our degree marks. Now 0 is our ultimate goal. That would mean that we're level. We would use these functions right here to raise those jacks. You'll have orange lights that pop up in the corners to let you know that those are indicating the areas where it is low. So if this blinking light on the left hand side is orange, then that means that our left side is low. Same thing on the right, front, and rear. So we would just raise that until that light goes out, and eventually once we hit that 0 mark, our green light in the middle will indicate that we are leveled out. If we need to retract those jacks, we'll just hold down that retract button for just a second. Our red light will come on indicating retract, and we can hit those buttons again and it will retract those jacks. Now front will run front, rear will run rear, and then if we want to do left or right, it will do those left or right jacks. To take off that retract, you just hold that button down for a second and it will go back. Now auto retract will once again retract everything. And our next one, it shows us our stroke on our jacks. So the LF and RF, that's left front and right front. So this is the amount that those jacks are extended out, and they only have so much stroke on them depending on what jacks they are. So if we stroke out, we run out of jack, you will get an error letting you know out of stroke, and that means that we need to put some blocks or get on a more level area that it doesn't have any more jack left to level that system, and it will stop the auto level. Same thing, left rear, right rear for our jacks. Also on this system, right whenever you turn it on, you can get your voltage display on there. And if you want to just operate your front landing gears, you just got to the campground, you're trying to disconnect from your truck, you don't have to go into that manual mode. You can go straight into operation by hitting those front jacks right there, and that will operate the landing gears in the front. Same thing if you want to retract them, hold down that retract for a second, and then it will operate once again just the front landing gears. From that point, you go into your auto level and allow the unit to level out. Now, I want to make sure that we're not moving around in the unit while it is auto leveling. It'll take a few minutes to hit that auto level point. Once it says it's complete, then you're free to go ahead and open up your doors and get inside the unit and start setting everything up. On our control center, we have our satellite cable and auxiliary ports for our coax connections. If we have outdoor satellite, we can hook that up. Park cable, we hook that up there, and if we have a third connection we'd like to run through all our TVs, we can hook that up right there. We have our quick connect right here for our blue coiled hose. We can hook up a spray port there. This coax port on the side here runs directly to our outside TV that we can go ahead and hook whatever we want directly to that as well. We have a switch over here for our front cap lights and our slide lights. And we have another switch up in the top right corner, kind of hard to see. That is our water pump. That 12-volt water pump will pull from our onboard water storage, and it will supply water to our faucets on the inside in the event that we have actual water in that tank. We'll talk about how to fill that in a second. Our other option is our city water connection. Our city water connection is right here. This is where we would hook that water hose up. If we have a bib at the campground, we can hook that water hose up, turn it on. That will supply water to our fixtures. So if you didn't have that, you want to fill your fresh tank and use that water pump. Right here we have the combination of all the different options for how our water can go out into our unit. So we have our dry camping. So this would be if we have already filled our tank, we would go ahead and turn it to here. We turn that water pump on and it will pull from that tank. Next one is our power fill tank. We would have it in this option here to be able to fill that tank through that city water connection there. Now that onboard storage, once you add water to it, that does add more weight to our unit. If we don't want it, there is a valve underneath that we can go ahead and pull that and drain that water out. We don't want any more than what we need because of the added extra weight, and we don't want to leave it in there too long because that water will become stagnant over time. If we have a city water connection at the campsite, we can go ahead and hook that hose up right here, turn it to this configuration, and then we have our city water directly out to all of our stuff. Winterization option would pull from right here into our unit, and that end of that hose would need to go into a bottle of RV antifreeze. This is to be able to winterize your unit. There are more steps to this process. You can find that in your owner's manual or in our video on HAP's Helpful Hacks. Our last one is siphon sanitize to tank, which would be this configuration here. That is to sanitize that onboard water storage tank. You could do a mixture of bleach and water into that tank to go ahead and sanitize it and clean it out. Our next option over here is our black tank flush. That is to go ahead and flush out that sewage system out of our black tank. We would hook that up. We'll talk a little more about that when we get to our tank system. We do have a gray tank valve right here for that secondary gray tank outlet over here. Once again, we will go over the gray and black tanks when we get to those outlets. And we have a GFCI protected outlet right here on the side. On this unit, we do have our gray and black tank valves also in that front control center. This is going to be for the port right there towards the front. Behind our pass-through compartment, we have our Furrion tankless water heater system that is going to be powered by 12 volts. Source of the heat is going to be propane. And then behind that, we have our Dometic furnace right there. Same thing, 12 volt powered and propane to heat it. So we're going to go over the operation of those when we get to inside for that thermostat and controller for that. In the meantime, let's take a look at our dump station. All right, so here we are just under our J-wrap. We're going to see a red and blue line sticking out of here. These are our low point drains. They have valves on the end. We're going to use that whenever we are winterizing our unit. We have more information on that in your owner's manual, as well as some videos on our YouTube channel that will go over a deeper dive on that winterization. Here we have our outlet for our black tank and our gray tank, the valves that we saw in that front compartment right there. This is where you're going to hook up your connection to your sewer port at the campsite or dump station. So let's talk about our tanks. We have gray water and black water. Gray water is going to be fairly clean water. We're getting it from our sink and our shower, stuff like that. That's where it's going to go. Now if we have that connection at the campsite, we can leave our gray tank open all the time and just let that water drain out so we don't have to keep going and opening it up after we take a bunch of showers. Our black tank, however, we need to leave that valve closed until we are ready to dump, because we're obviously putting sewage in there from our toilet, so solids will dry up if we don't keep water in the system. So let's go through our dump procedure. We're going to have our hose hooked up. We're going to pull the black tank valve in that compartment. That is going to go ahead and start dumping everything out. In the meantime, we hook our water hose up to that black tank flush in there. We kick the water hose on, and that's going to send water to a jet spray port on the other side of that tank. That's going to help push any materials that are in that tank down over to our valve. Once we are satisfied with flushing that system out, we can go ahead and close that black tank valve, and we shut off our black tank flush. From there, we go on the inside, we hold that pedal down. We want to add several gallons of good clean water into that tank, as well as our chemicals, because there are still going to be some little small deposits and stuff in there, and the chemicals are going to help degrade that. While you're traveling down the road, the water that's in there will help slosh around and clean up some of that tank. And we don't want to make sure that whatever is still left in there, if we haven't flushed it well enough, it will not dry up in that tank on sensors, sidewalls, anything like that, and it'll of course decay with the chemicals. We do have more pro tips on how to flush out that black tank. Of course, you named it. You can find it in our HAPS Helpful Hacks section on the Great American RV YouTube channel. We're going to notice in between our tires, a little white valve right there. That is going to be able to drain that fresh tank system in the event we want to empty it out. On the rear of our unit, we're going to see our rear leveling jack right there. Same thing, a little black plug at the bottom. We put that bit in there. We can override that system. We need to unplug the 12 volts from it whenever we do that in order to override it. We have our slide out right here, 12 volt power slide out. We have a motor in the underbelly that's going to run that slide in and out. We do have a hole opposite side through our J-wrap right here, and we're going to see where we have an override for that slide. We can stick our crank handle in there and manually operate that slide in the event we get in a bind and it is not operating. Down here we do have our other gray port. This is for a secondary gray tank on our system. Our valve is off to the left. Same thing, we can leave that valve open all the time as long as we have that connection at the campsite. You can get a Y pipe, connect both these hoses together into one to go into that system. Now over here we have our 50 amp power supply. This is where our power cord is going to go in. We put it in there, turn it to the right to lock it in. We also have a little retainer ring on there. We want to go ahead and tighten that down to make sure that plug can't come out unless we want it to. We know kids are going to be running around here, so on and so forth. They trip on that cord. We don't want it necessarily pulling out of the camper. Now when we plug into this system, we want to plug this in first and then plug it into our shore power at the campsite. Reduces arcing and everything on this plug, helps it last a whole lot longer. And then we also want to make sure our AC systems are off so we're not causing any surges to that appliance. On the rear of our unit, we will see we are pre-wired for that Furrion backup camera system. Power is ran, and we just go ahead and take some screws out, put a camera in there. We can see behind us while we're traveling down the road or when we're backing up. We'll turn our running lights on our unit to power that system in order for us to monitor it. Down here we also have another quick connect spray port for that blue coiled hose we have in the front. We'll also have a receiver hitch down here at the bottom if we want to tow a trailer or anything like that behind us. It does have a weight rating, so make sure that you are correct on that. We have our little tow hook options as well as our 4-way plug back here for lights. We're also going to have our factory supply ladder back here that's going to gain access to our roof. Why do I need to get on my roof? Well, that is the #1 priority for you is maintenance. We need to make sure we're checking that roof sealant for any cracking, peeling, deterioration. We need to clean it and seal up over it. We need to do the same thing around all of our trim, our lights, our windows, all that stuff every 60 to 90 days. This is required by the manufacturer. That way you are maintaining your unit and not allowing water entry. This is the #1 thing that customers do not do on their unit is maintain sealant, and it leads to some pretty terrible repairs. Make sure you're doing this so your camper can last for years to come. I know it sounds a little tasking, but I promise you, if you don't do it, you're going to end up regretting it later on. We do have other videos that goes over some more information in regards to this. Please go watch them. #1 most important thing. It's like changing the oil in your car. You want to do that, right? We also want to get up there and check our roof after trips, make sure no low-lying tree limbs or anything poked any holes in that rubber. And we also want to clean that roof at least twice a year and make sure that we are maintaining that rubber properly. On the passenger side of our unit, our front compartment has that other propane tank in there. We'll have more access to our pass-through bay, and above me we have our 12-volt powered awning as well as our lights. That is going to be a sunshade only. It's not intended to keep us dry from any extensive weather. Anytime a rain's coming in, windstorm, anything like that, roll that awning in. You're leaving your camper for an extended period of time, roll the awning in. You want to make sure you protect that. It's going to be an insurance claim. Otherwise, in the event you leave it out and a storm destroys it, you don't want to go through that kind of repair. So one thing about our awning is we are going to leave it out for a little light rain, stuff like that. We're going to have some dew on it. We're going to have condensation from our AC probably get on there. Main thing is we don't want that stuff to puddle up on our awning. In order to prevent that from happening, we need to pitch our awning or lean it either to the front or to the back. Both awning arms are going to operate the same way, so you can choose which side you want to do it on, but you only need to do one side. Come over here, grab it at this pinch point right here, pull it down, and that will pitch our awning and allow water to run off of our system. When we are ready to roll that awning in, lift it up, and we're ready to roll in. Make sure we're taking care of this and we are bringing it in when it's supposed to be brought in. Promise you once again, we don't want to deal with the insurance headache of having to have that replaced or repaired. Moving down the line under our awning, we have our outside TV port right here for our cable and satellite, and we also have another GFCI protected outlet. We have up here a vent for over our stovetop. If we want to go ahead and ventilate out on that hood, we need to make sure the tabs are open on there. If we want to go ahead and close them when we're in storage so no insects can get in there, we can go ahead and do that. We also have our other rear leveling jack right here. Same thing, got a plug on the bottom of it to override. Speaking of overrides, we have our hole in the J-wrap right here to override that rear slide as well. On the very rear of our unit, we have our outdoor kitchen. We have a 110 dorm fridge out here. It's going to operate anytime we're plugged into shore power. And one thing we need to keep in mind with this system, anytime we plug it in, right, it's going to cool, it's going to freeze, all that stuff. When we unplug it, it's going to defrost. So make sure that whenever you go to store your unit, we're getting all the water out of here. We've defrosted it properly, cleaned it out, aired it out, done all that stuff. Otherwise, water is going to leak out of this system and damage our wood components around it, which manufacturers are not going to take care of. So make sure you're defrosting it properly, considered customer maintenance. Over here we have our little gas stove, our grill top right here. Flip that latch, griddle, our LP line hose right here for hookup. That's going to loop around. We're going to put it through a hole right there on the back, and we have a quick connect down there at the bottom. Has a little lever on it. We're going to have to turn that lever off, shut that valve off in order to hook this quick connect up first, then turn it back on in order for flow to come through that system. This is going to pull off of our propane tanks there in the front. And whenever we are done, obviously we need to go ahead and just push that system back in, put our travel latch back down so it doesn't bounce around while we're traveling down the road. We're also going to notice this little hole right here at the bottom. That is for our spare tire. We have another little option for to stick our crank in right there and be able to drop that spare tire down. That wraps up everything on the rear of our unit. On our entry door, we are going to notice some resistance when we open and close that door. That's our friction controlled hinges right there to keep the wind from blowing and slamming that door up against our wall. Also keep our kids from doing the same thing. We also have our solid steps right here. Our solid steps, whenever we flip them up and down, want to make sure that door is open all the way. Of course, we have our awning behind this door right here. We had to close our awning to make sure we have enough clearance. Because we do have some brackets on the side of here, we don't want it to tear up our door. So to operate our solid steps, we flip them up, lock them into our frame there, we're good to go. To pull them down, we pull that blue latch, we lift it down. We'll notice these silver tabs on each side. After we have leveled our unit or ran through our auto level, we want to make sure we level our steps next. You come over here, we lay them down, and we can push in those silver tabs right there, and our legs will extend and retract out of there manually, and we want to make sure we level our steps out by doing that. We want a good flush threshold right here at the bottom. That way our door will shut properly with no gaps in the system. And we also want to make sure that our frames don't hit off of our door or our steps right there at the bottom. Right when we walk into our unit, we open up the cabinet, we have our control center right here. You can connect this to a Bluetooth system and download that Compass Connect app, and we can see some of our options in there, maybe be able to function some of that stuff through our cell phone, but definitely monitor our panels for our tanks. Up here, you will see the levels for all that, our fresh tank, our black tank, our 2 gray tanks right there, as well as the condition of our battery, if it's charged or getting low. We'll also notice right here our 12-volt options right here for our ceiling lights, our awning lights, and our porch light. Also have 12-volt tank heaters, which are going to heat those tanks, our gray tank, black tank, so on and so forth, in extreme weather to keep them from freezing up. That 12-volt water pump we talked about is going to pull off of that fresh tank system. You have the option here as well as in your control center to go ahead and use that. That is an on-demand water pump, so it's only going to run whenever you're actually operating, like your faucet, your shower, so on and so forth. We will hear that pump kind of vibrating in there until we turn that water off at the faucet. If you hear it running and you're certain that water is not on anywhere in your unit, you want to shut that system off. It either means that fresh tank is empty or you have a leak somewhere in your system. You want to go ahead and investigate, and that can burn that pump up in the event we leave it running with no water in the system. Now below we have our awning and our slide out. Once again, all 12-volt operated system. Below our control center, we have our max air vent. Pretty self-explanatory, 4 speeds. Vent open, vent closed, fan off. That is going to be for that vent fan in our kitchen area. We also have our Furrion thermostat right here. This one is going to operate our living room AC as well as heat for our whole unit. I'm going to go over that right now. We'll start with our cool option first. Our cool will cool the air throughout our unit. We of course set our thermostat to whatever point we want it to be, and we have our fan speed options. We have low and high. For low and high, that fan will run all the time. Now whenever we want that fan to cut off, whenever the compressor cuts off, much like we likely do at home, we have it on auto. That system will shut off and on with the compressor. Our next mode is our heat mode. Our heat mode activates our gas-powered furnace on our unit. We choose our set point, and our heater will come on whenever necessary. There is fan speeds on here, but it does not change the fan speed on that furnace. It is a single fan speed on there controlled by the furnace board. Our next mode is our fan mode. Our fan mode simply circulates air throughout our unit without cooling it or anything. This will come out of our rooftop air, and we can just change from high to low to control that fan speed if we wish. That fan will stay on the entire time when we have it in our fan mode. Our last mode is our dry mode. Our dry mode is like a dehumidifier. We can choose our set point, and it will cool our unit down to that set point, and it will continue to cool past that, but alternate every 6 to 10 minutes off and on. That way it doesn't drop that temperature too low and freeze you out of the unit, but it still dries the air in your unit. Another thing to note with our furnace is that the air is going to come out of the vents on the floor. It's not going to come out of the rooftop air. Your only rooftop air is going to be your fan and your cool and your dry. Your heat will come out of those floor vents from the furnace. I have a couple of 12-volt switches. One is to turn off and on our lights in our hallway. One is for our lights above our cabinetry right here. Down below that, we're going to see our 110 control center. We can flip that open, see all of our 110 breakers, all labeled, so any 110 appliances that may not be working, we want to go there first. We're also in here going to have our main GFCI outlets. So all those GFCI outlets I pointed out outside, there's going to be more in your kitchen and bathroom, any wet location. In the event that those aren't working, we want to come here and check that system. And if it keeps tripping right off the bat, we may have too many griddles, coffee makers, stuff like that plugged in, and it's automatically going to re-trip that system. Also could be because one of those outlets is wet, so go back, double check those two things if the system continues to trip. Above that, we'd have to move our couch out a little bit, but you can pull that cover off. You're going to have your 12-volt blade fuses for all your 12-volt components in there as well. Same thing, all labeled in there, so in the event that one of those isn't working, you can come directly to it, check the fuse, and make sure that it is not blown. Moving into our kitchen by the entry door, we have our LP detector. That LP detector is going to let us know if we have a propane leak in our system. We need to go ahead and check that audible alarm once a month or every time we go camping to make sure that system is working and can alert us in the event that we have gas in our unit. We're also going to have an expiration date either stamped on the front or the back of it, lets you know when that expires so you can get it replaced. 12-volt operated component. It's It's going to pull off your battery system hardwired in there, so it will be on all the time. We're also going to have our CO and smoke detectors mounted up on the ceiling. You need to check the 9-volt batteries in those and test the alarms in them as well. In our living room area, we do have a fold out into a bed if we want more sleeping option, as well as the ability to remove those 2 poles down at the bottom, drop this table down onto those bumpers, and have a more sleeping option in our dinette booth. Moving down the line, we have our entertainment area right here for our TV. We're gonna have our port on the back for satellite, cable, antenna. Your cable and antenna are gonna be on the same port. We have our satellite option too that would go to a receiver and then into our TV. And on there, you're going to see a little red button with a little red light next to it. That is our antenna boost power. So what that does is anytime we are searching for antenna channels, we want to make sure that that light is on. I will send a 12-volt boost to the antenna to help amplify it, pick up more channels in your area. If we want to search for cable, we need to push that red button, turn that light off so it doesn't scramble the channels we're getting from the campground. So light on for antenna, light off for cable. Behind me, we have our microwave, our 110 microwave with the hood vent option right there to be able to ventilate out. We talked about that vent on the outside. We need to make sure it is open. And then we have our 3-burner stove right here by Furrion. Glass cooktop, that is how we need to have it when we travel. We can also have more counter space like that as well. In use, we need to flip that glass up. We have our 3 burners exposed. We pick which one we want to use. We kick it over to the flame icon and we crank that manual light until it actually lights up. Now, thing about our propane system, most common error people have with propane components is you'll get air in your system. This can happen when we store our unit after we've turned our propane tanks off from storing it. We come back out, we turn it back on, you're gonna end up with air in your system. This can also happen if we change our tanks out. Really easy way to fix that. As soon as you bring that unit out of storage, you're ready to go camping, turn your propane tanks on, come over here and light your stove. It may take a few turns to get it lit because you're bleeding that air out of the system. Just stay here cranking it, put a long stem lighter on it, whatever you want to do. Light that stove top, let it run for about 60 seconds, and you more than likely got most, if not all, the air out of your system. You want to do this before you operate things like your furnace or your tankless water heater, so you don't end up with errors due to that air in the system and then having to recirculate and operate that system again. Easiest way to do it is coming over to that stove top. Now, you only have to do it that one time. Once that system has been bled out, you don't have to do it again unless you change out your tanks possibly, or if you restored your unit and turn those tanks off. Now, below that, we have our actual oven down here. That oven's gonna have a pilot down there. We need to light the knob all the way to the right. We turn it to our flame icon. Now, this one, we do have to push that knob down to keep emitting the gas out of that pilot. We go ahead, crank until it lights. Once it lights, hold it down for about 15 to 30 seconds, warm up that thermocouple, then we can pull off of it and turn to our desired temp. Once we are done, of course, shut it off, we're good to go. Do have a switch over here on the right that will light up our oven or just our knobs or both. And one thing about our knobs, they turn blue, but whether they're off or on, they're going to turn red. That lets you know that gas is being emitted out of that system. So it's a nice little safety heads up, especially if kids are running around playing with stuff. We do have our bunkhouse in here. Not a whole lot to go over in here. We do have separate hookups for our TV system. You're only going to have that one behind the main TV for our antenna boost and everything. That's the only place you need to go to operate that. That will work throughout all the outlets. Also have our double door Furrion refrigerator right here. We'll go over some more information on that right now. All right, so here we have our Furrion residential fridge. We have a freezer on this side, fridge on this side, and we have our control center right here. We can see that we have our couple of options. We have fridge, freezer, function, and lock. In order to change into these functions, we need to make sure that lock icon is gone. So we can do that by holding down on the word itself, not the icon. Eventually that will go away. Now we can change the temperature on our fridge and freezer if we wish by pressing, once again, the words, not the numbers. Now we have a couple of functions on here. The first function is a little umbrella with a sun on it. That is our vacation mode option. That is going to be considered to be off-grid. So it's going to reduce the amount of work that compressor is doing. That way we're not using as much power. Let's say that we're working off of our batteries and we don't want to use as much power, so we want to put that in that vacation mode. This screen will auto lock itself, so if you open it back up and you're messing with it, you may see that lock icon come back on. We just hold that button once again. Our next mode is a little snowflake. That is our super freeze mode. That's going to drop the temperature down more on our freezer and help cool, super freeze whatever we might have put in there, right? Our next one is a little drop with a snowflake on it, and that is going to be our fridge cold mode. So our super cold mode for our fridge side, same thing. We can activate those both individually or at the same time. We keep clicking them and all of them will go away. Now once everything's gone, that would just be normal operation, and we can go ahead and adjust that temperature whatever we want. The other ones are set already for those modes. Now we're also going to have an option on here if we store our unit, we want to put it in, they call it a low power mode. It's basically turning everything off. If we hold down that lock button once again to unlock it, and we hold down the function for 5 seconds, the system is going to turn off. We'll notice some dashes right here. That shuts your compressor off, that shuts the lights off inside the fridge. That's basically how we turn this system off. So if we're storing our unit, we want to shut it down. We also want to defrost this freezer, get any water out of it, moisture, anything like that. Same thing for our fridge. There's no drain tubes on these, so that water is all it's going to do is leak out. Make sure we put towels on the floor, wipe all of it out, because that can cause damage to any wood components around it. So make sure we're maintaining this properly. You're also going to have a little travel knob for your refrigerator to help ensure that your goods don't fall out. Take that, screw that into that hole up top, and you tighten that down while you're in travel to keep those doors from opening. Here we are in our bathroom. In our shower, we have our standard hot cold faucet as well as an on-off button on the shower head. That's generally used whenever you don't have a dump station or you don't have city water. You're trying to conserve the amount of water you put into your gray tank as well as the amount of water you use out of your fresh tank system. So it's just an easier way to turn that water off and on in between showering off and lathering up. We can go ahead and just hit that button up there versus trying to find the sweet spot for the hot water on our faucet. If you want to use it, you can. If you don't have to. You have that dump station in city water, you don't need to. Beyond that, we do have a vent up in the ceiling with a fan on it. When you flip that switch right there, kick our 12-volt fan on. We want to emit any humidity and stuff out of here to help reduce the risk for mold and mildew in this bathroom. Our toilet right here, pretty standard. We have a valve there. We're going to push it to go ahead and flush anything down. Only things we're putting in there is number one, which is your liquids, right? We put that in there. We can just hit the pedal and flush. Number two, which is your solids. We want to make sure we fill that bowl about 1/2 to 3/4 of the way with water so we have enough to actually push those solids down to your black tank and not have any clogging in your system. In order to do that, barely push that pedal down right there and water will start coming out into that bowl and we can go ahead and fill it up. Number three is going to be RV toilet paper only. We want to make sure we get appropriate toilet paper so it degrades properly in that tank and doesn't cause any clogging whenever you go to flush it out. Last thing is our chemicals. Our chemicals help degrade whatever deposits are in there, and they also make it smell nice. In our bathroom, we also have our Furrion tankless water heater. We'll go over the operation of that right now. In our bathroom, we'll see our Furrion tankless control center. Pretty simple. We have our power on, off and on, kick it on. That's going to be our set point for our water. We can change that by hitting our up and down buttons right there. Our indicators right here, power, Fahrenheit, Celsius. If we want to change one to the other, we hit that bottom right button, and flame. Flame is only going to kick on whenever we turn that hot water on, indicating that system is working. And once again, on demand, it'll only come on whenever we have that hot water on. All right, in our front bedroom, not much to go over. You do have some storage under your bed right here with some strong arms to assist. We're going to have another Furrion thermostat in here that's going to control our front AC. It's going to control just the cool only option, not heat. So that's only going to be controlled by our living room thermostat in there. Now, for our AC systems, both of them are going to be the same. You're going to have a ceiling assembly. We're going to notice we have a little vent on here. We can open it up. This is our quick dump feature. It's going to blow air out just in this area. When we close it, it's going to blow air out of our ceiling vents up at the top. If we leave this open, this is mainly just a quick dump, cool off this area quickly, right? Up here we have a filter. We pull these two tabs. We can go ahead and clean that filter. We need to make sure we're doing that fairly regularly so we're not restricting airflow to our AC and they can run efficiently.
Well, we hope you found that resourceful, but wait, there's more information on our Great American RV YouTube channel. This channel right here, find the playlist Hap's Helpful Hacks. We go over different products in this unit, and we'll take a deeper dive with more diagnostics, more information, as well as helpful tips when you're out camping. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all those awesome things on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you found us, and keep watching here at Great American RV Superstores, where we bring the how-to you.